Chapter 4 of Far from the Madding Crowd. Gabriel's Resolve, the Visit, the Mistake. In Chapter 3, we have seen that Gabriel met with an accident. He went unconscious, and it was the woman from the wagon who had saved his life. Moving to Chapter 4, the girl could make ripples of emotions in Gabriel Org. So he fell in love with the girl, and his sentiments deepened towards her. After much inquiry, he had found out that the girl's name was Bathsheba Everdene. So this is the hero of our novel, Bathsheba Everdene. And he started to chant it to himself, "I'll make her my wife, or upon my soul I shall be good for nothing." So he was rooted in that particular direction of Bathsheba, and he felt that if he can't get her, then his life will be futile. Thus, Gabriel Org tried to create an opportunity to visit Mrs. Hurst's cottage. Mrs. Hurst is the aunt of Bathsheba Everdene, the woman we have seen in the shed that night. As he reached the house, he could see that Bathsheba was not indoors. So Og talked to Mrs. Hurst. "I have brought a lamp for Miss Everdene. I thought she might like one to rear. Girls do." Then Mrs. Hurst replied that she might, and Gabriel came directly to the matter. "The lamp is not really the business I came about, Mrs. Hurst. In short, I was going to ask her if she'd like to be married." And he conveyed that he'd be very glad if she agrees to marry him. And then he asks Hurst whether she has got any other young man hanging about her at all. That is, are there any other young men who are coming behind her with proposals? This was Mrs. Hurst's reply. "Yes, bless you, ever so many young men. You see, Farmer Oak, she is so good looking and an excellent scholar besides. She was going to be a governess once, you know, only she was too wild. Not that her young men ever come here, but, Lord, in the nature of women, she must have a dozen." So Mrs. Hurst is saying that she must be having a dozen of young men running behind her, hanging behind her, because she is a good-looking woman. Besides that, she is a scholar as well. Gabriel Org felt dejected upon hearing this news. So he felt that she wouldn't be choosing him. So finding himself unfortunate, he started home. He didn't wait for Bathsheba to come home. When he had reached about 200 yards, that is around 180 meters, he heard Bathsheba running behind him. She came racing after him, and Og waited for her to reach. Og apologized to her for making her run this far. "I'm sorry to have made you run so fast, my dear." And Bathsheba replied thus, "It was quite a mistake, Aunt's telling you I had a young man already." Bathsheba went on, "I haven't a sweetheart at all, and I never had one, and I thought that as times go with women, it was such a pity to send you away thinking that I had several." So Bathsheba had come running behind him to correct the mistake, or to tell him that she doesn't have a sweetheart. Gabriel was so glad to hear that news, and he thus started to give promises to her, started making promises to her as to what he can offer after they both get married. She tells her that he has a nice, snug little farm, and when we be married, I am quite sure I can work twice as hard as I do now. So he is ensuring her that he'll be working twice as hard as he is working now after they get married. Let's see what Bathsheba is replying now. "Why, Farmer Oak?" she said over the top, looking at him with rounded eyes. "I never said I was going to marry you." So she is asking all of a sudden, "Why are you telling all these to me, Farmer Oak? I didn't say that I am going to marry you." Gabriel Oak becomes perplexed. "Well, that is a tale," said Oak with dismay, "to run after anybody like this and then say you don't want him." Then here Bathsheba, she tries to explain her side. "I hate to be thought men's property in that way, though possibly I shall be had some day." So she is saying that she doesn't want to be treated as somebody's property. But she is also foreseeing that this may happen someday. So she is telling that why she had come there is to correct him. Her only intention to approach him was to correct the mistake aunt has made by telling that she might be having a dozen of young men hanging around her, that she might be having a sweetheart. So that was her intention, to correct the mistake. At this point, Gabriel Oak tries to convince her. He tells her all the things that he would be doing after their marriage. "I can make you happy," said he to the back of her head across the bush. "You shall have a piano in a year or two. Farmers' wives are getting to have pianos now. And I'll practice up the flute right well to play with you in the evenings." So this was the first promise he had made. Earlier he had made one promise that he'll be working hard. Then now he is saying that he'll get her a piano. Then the next promise, and have one of those little 10-pound gigs for market, and nice flowers and birds, cocks and hens, I mean, because they be useful. So he is telling that he'll get her gigs and then flowers, birds, all sorts of those things. Then, and a frame for cucumbers, like a gentleman and lady, and a frame for the cucumbers to grow. Then another promise, and when the wedding was over, we'd have it put in the newspaper list of marriages. Maybe at that time, this would have been a luxury. So he is saying that he'll advertise their marriage in the newspaper. And then, and the babies in the birds, every man jack of them. And at home by the fire, whenever you look up, there I shall be. And whenever I look up, there will be you. So he is saying that whenever we both look for the other person would be there. And at that time, when he made this promise, the countenance of Bathsheba fell all of a sudden. Her face became sad all of a sudden. She became silent, and she said thus. She looks at him as if she had made a decision. "No, 'tis no use," she said. "I don't want to marry you." "Try." "I have tried hard all the time I have been thinking. For a marriage would be very nice in one sense. People would talk about me and think I had won my battle, and I should feel triumphant and all that. But a husband, well, why, he'd always be there, as you say. Whenever I looked up, there he'd be." "Of course he would. That is. Well, what I mean is that I shouldn't mind being a bride at a wedding if I could be one without having a husband. But since a woman can't show off in that way by herself, I shan't marry, at least yet." So here she is saying that getting married is nice. She likes it. Why? Because people would be talking about her all the time. And she would be feeling triumphant. She'd be feeling victorious that she had won a battle. But she can't accept the idea of having a husband. She is not able to relish someone being always there. Thus, she is saying that she doesn't mind to be a bride at a wedding, but she doesn't want a husband. Gabriel, he again assures Bathsheba that his love for her is true. But this is what Bathsheba tells him. I want somebody to tame me. I am too independent, and you would never be able to, I know. So this is what she is telling. She has identified herself as an independent woman, and she wants the person she marries to be someone who would be able to tame her independent spirit. And she is saying that Gabriel would never be able to tame her, and thus she is declining his proposal. She declines him one last time, and Oak affirms that he won't ask her anymore, saying thus, accepting the rejection, Gabriel Oak left the place. This is the end of chapter 4. Hope I could drive home the chapter clearly to you. Thank you for listening.